As I was leaving, the waitress locked the door and said, "Promise me you won't pass out." I smiled at her. I promised. But my hands were already shaking. I did not cry. Not there. Not in front of anyone. I picked up my coat slowly, like time had suddenly become very heavy. The chair scraped softly against the floor. The sound felt louder than it should have. Every small noise felt like it was touching my chest. Outside, the rain was falling in thin, quiet lines. Not angry rain. Just tired rain. The kind that does not rush anywhere. I stood there for a moment, under the small restaurant awning, breathing in and out. In. Out. Inside, my daughter-in-law was still sitting at the table. She did not look back. She did not say goodbye. My son had already left. I kept thinking about the way she said it. Calm. Polite. Almost gentle. "I think it's best if you don't come by anymore." No shouting. No insults. Just a sentence. One sentence that ended a whole part of my life. People think pain always arrives loudly. Like a door slammed hard. Like harsh words. Like yelling. But sometimes pain whispers. Sometimes it sounds like someone saying, "It's better this way." I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a woman who once mattered very much in a small family kitchen. And now I was standing outside a restaurant, holding a promise to a waitress who was more worried about me than my own family was. I walked to my car slowly. My legs felt unsure, like they were not fully listening to me anymore. I sat down, closed the door, and rested my head on the steering wheel. I thought of my son when he was 5 years old. I thought of his small hands holding mine when he was scared of the dark. I thought of the way he used to say, "Don't go, Mom. Stay a little longer." Now I was the one being told to go. I did not ask why. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I smiled. I nodded. And I left. Because when you love someone deeply, sometimes you choose silence over dignity. And as the rain tapped softly on my windshield, I realized something that broke my heart in a very quiet way. This was not the beginning of the pain. This was the end of a very long story I had been ignoring. Part 2, Setup. I want to tell you who we were before everything became so quiet. My name is Margaret Wilson. Most people call me Maggie. I am 68 years old, and I live alone now in a small house at the edge of town. It is not a sad house. It is just a quiet one. The kind where you can hear the clock ticking in the other room. I was married once. My husband's name was Robert. Everyone called him Bob. Bob was a simple man. He worked with his hands. He fixed things instead of throwing them away. He believed in eating dinner at the table and sleeping at the same time every night. When he laughed, he leaned his head back like the sound surprised him. We were married for 41 years. When Bob passed away, the house felt too big. Not empty. Just stretched. Like it was still waiting for him to walk through the door. We had one child. Our son, Daniel. Daniel was our whole world. I know people say you should not make a child your whole world, but we did. He was kind. Quiet. Thoughtful. The kind of boy who noticed things. He used to bring me dandelions from the yard and say, "They're for you, Mom. They're the happiest flowers." When Daniel grew up, he moved out, but he never moved far. He called every Sunday. He stopped by after work. He helped Bob with the gutters. He hugged me every time he left. I thought that meant we would always stay close. Then Daniel met Emily. Emily was polite. Soft-spoken. She smiled a lot, but her smile never quite reached her eyes. I remember thinking she seemed nervous around me, and I told myself it was because she wanted to make a good impression. The first time Daniel brought her to our house, I made roast chicken and mashed potatoes. I used my good plates. Bob wore his clean shirt. Emily said, "Thank you so much for dinner, Mrs. Wilson." I told her to call me Maggie. She nodded, but she never did. They got married 2 years later. A small wedding. Simple. Beautiful. I cried happy tears and held Daniel's face in my hands and told him I loved him. When Bob passed away a year after the wedding, everything changed. Daniel cried like a little boy again. He held on to me like he used to when he was small. Emily stood nearby, quiet, her hands folded together. After the funeral, Daniel said, "Mom, you're not alone. You have us." And I believed him. At first, things felt okay. I visited once or twice a week. I helped with laundry. I cooked meals when Emily was tired. When their daughter, Lily, was born, my heart opened in a way I didn't know was still possible. I held that baby and whispered promises into her tiny ear. "I will always be here for you," I said. Emily thanked me, but something had shifted. I could feel it. Like a window closing slowly, without a sound. Little things began to change. Daniel stopped calling as often. Visits needed to be scheduled. Emily would say, "This week is a bit busy." I told myself it was normal. New family. New responsibilities. One afternoon, I rearranged the kitchen cabinets while Emily was at work. I thought I was helping. When she came home and saw it, she went very still. "Oh," she said. "You didn't have to do that." I apologized right away. I moved everything back. But something stayed in the air. Another time, I picked Lily up when she cried, and Emily gently took her from my arms and said, "I've got it." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were firm. I started choosing my words carefully. I started asking permission for things I never used to ask permission for. "Is it okay if I come by? Do you need help? Would you like me to stay?" Daniel still hugged me, but his hugs were shorter. Distracted. I missed Bob more during those days. He would have known what to say. He would have told me not to worry. But I worried anyway. I tried to be invisible. I tried to be useful without being present. And slowly, without anyone saying it out loud, I began to feel like a guest in my son's life. Still, I kept showing up. Still, I kept smiling. Still, I kept believing love would be enough. I did not see what was coming. Or maybe I did. I just didn't want to admit it. The distance did not arrive all at once. It came in small steps. Quiet ones. The kind you only notice when you turn around and realize how far apart you now stand. At first, it was just timing. Daniel would say, "This weekend is a little full, Mom." Emily would add, "Maybe next week." Next week often became the week after that. I started marking days on my calendar, not because I had plans, but because I was waiting. Waiting for a call. Waiting for a reason to be included again. When I did visit, things felt different. The house was neat, but not warm in the way it used to be. Toys were put away quickly. Conversation stayed on the surface. Emily moved around the kitchen like she was careful not to bump into me, even with words. I noticed she stopped asking me questions. No more, "How are you feeling?" No more, "Do you want some tea?" Instead, there were polite statements. "We already ate." "Lily's on a schedule now. She needs quiet time." I understood schedules. I understood tired parents. I told myself I was being sensitive. But my heart felt like it was learning how to shrink. One afternoon, I brought over a small box of Lily's old baby clothes. I had kept them folded neatly at my house. I thought maybe Emily would want them, or at least like to see them. She opened the box, looked inside, and closed it again. "Oh," she said gently. "We're trying not to hold on to too many things." I nodded. I smiled. I took the box back to my car. That night, I cried over tiny socks that no longer belonged to anyone. Daniel started calling less. When I called him, the conversations were short. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm fine." "Good. That's good." Silence filled the rest. I wanted to ask him if I had done something wrong. I wanted to say, "I miss you." But I was afraid of sounding needy. Afraid of pushing him further away. Emily began setting clearer boundaries. "Please text before coming over. We're trying to keep things calm." "Lily needs consistency." Each sentence was reasonable on its own. Together, they built a wall I did not know how to climb. One evening, I overheard Emily say something that stayed with me. I was washing dishes, and she didn't know I could hear her. She was on the phone, her voice low. "I just feel like I never get space," she said. "She's always around." Always. I dried my hands slowly. I stepped into the hallway and waited until I was sure my face looked calm again. From that day on, I made myself smaller. I stopped offering advice. I stopped bringing meals. I stopped calling unless Daniel called first. Weeks passed. Then months. I saw Lily grow mostly through photos. Pictures sent in group texts. Smiling faces. Moments I was not part of. When Bob's birthday came around, I felt the ache deeper than usual. I asked Daniel if he wanted to come by and have dinner, just like we used to. He hesitated. "Emily's parents are coming that night," he said. I understood. I always understood. One Sunday, Emily invited me to meet them for lunch. A neutral place. A small cafe. I took it as a good sign. I wore my favorite sweater. I practiced smiling in the mirror. Lunch was polite. Careful. Emily talked more than usual, but her words felt planned. At the end, she looked at me and said, "Maggie, I hope you know we're just trying to do what's best for our family." I nodded. "Of course," I said. "I want that too." She smiled, but something in her eyes told me the conversation wasn't over. Daniel stayed quiet. As we stood to leave, Emily touched my arm lightly. "We'll be in touch," she said. I believed her. I always did. But as I drove home, something heavy settled inside me. A feeling I could not name yet. Like a door slowly closing, not with anger, but with certainty. And I realized I was no longer part of the center of my son's life. I was standing somewhere near the edge. Trying very hard not to fall off. The turning point did not come with a fight. There was no raised voice. No slammed door. No harsh words. It came with an invitation. Emily called me one afternoon. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. "Daniel and I were hoping we could all talk," she said. "Maybe over lunch." I felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this was a chance to clear the air. Maybe I had imagined the distance. We chose a quiet restaurant near their house. The kind of place where the lights are soft and the tables are far apart. I arrived early. I always do. I sat with my hands folded and watched people come and go. When Daniel and Emily arrived, Daniel kissed my cheek. Emily smiled politely. We ordered food. We talked about small things. The weather. Lily. Work. Then Emily put her fork down. "Maggie," she said, this is a little hard to talk about. My heart knew before my mind did. She took a breath. I think we need more space. The words hung between us like a thin wire. She continued, choosing each word carefully. You've been very involved. And I know it comes from love. But it's been overwhelming for me. I opened my mouth to speak, then closed it again. Daniel stared at his plate. I don't want this to sound ungrateful, Emily said. I just need room to be a mother. To run my own home. I nodded slowly. I understand, I said. And part of me meant it. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. I think it's best if you don't come by anymore. At least not for a while. A while. I looked at Daniel. He did not look back at me. I waited for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. The waitress came by, asking if everything was okay. Emily smiled and said yes. Inside, something broke very quietly. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I did not explain how alone I already was. I smiled. I said, if that's what you need. The rest of the lunch passed like a blur. I barely tasted the food. When we stood to leave, Emily hugged me briefly. Daniel hesitated, then hugged me too. I love you, Mom, he whispered. I nodded. I did not trust my voice. As I walked toward the door, the waitress caught my arm gently. Promise me you won't pass out, she said softly. You don't look so good. I smiled at her. I promised. Outside, the air felt cold and thin. I leaned against my car for a moment, breathing slowly. At home, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from me. Bob's chair. I guess it's just me now, I said out loud. The days that followed were long and quiet. No calls. No visits. No updates. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself to be patient. But weeks passed. Then months. I sent a birthday card to Lily. No response. I left a voicemail for Daniel. He called back 2 days later. Things are busy, Mom, he said. We'll talk soon. Soon never came. I began questioning everything. Had I been too much? Had I crossed lines without knowing? Had my love become a burden? I replayed every moment in my mind. Every visit. Every comment. Every offer to help. And slowly, a deep sadness settled in. Not anger. Just grief. Grief for a life I thought I would always be part of. Grief for a role that had been taken away without ceremony. One evening, I opened a drawer and found an old photo. Daniel at 5 years old, sitting on Bob's shoulders, laughing. I held it to my chest and whispered, I never meant to hurt anyone. The house listened quietly. And for the first time, I accepted the truth. This was not about space. This was about letting go. At first, I waited. I kept my phone close. I checked it more often than I care to admit. Every time it buzzed, my heart lifted, just a little. Most times, it was nothing. A reminder. A weather alert. A message from a store. The silence felt heavier than words ever could. After a while, I realized waiting was hurting me more than the truth itself. So I made a small decision. I stopped waiting. Not because I stopped loving my son. Not because I stopped caring. But because I needed to learn how to breathe again. I started with mornings. I made my bed neatly, even though no one would see it. I opened the curtains and let the light in. I made coffee and sat at the table, just like Bob and I used to. Some days, I talked to him out loud. Well, Bob, I'd say, it's quiet today. I imagined him smiling, telling me I was stronger than I thought. I went back to the little routines I had forgotten. I walked in the park near my house. I waved at neighbors I barely knew before. I joined a small reading group at the library. We didn't talk much about our lives. Mostly, we talked about stories. But sometimes, stories help you say the things you cannot say about yourself. One afternoon, I found a box in the closet. Inside were letters Bob had written to me over the years. Short notes. Simple words. Thank you for loving our boy so well. You make this house a home. I'm proud of you. I cried then. Not from pain alone, but from remembering who I was. I wasn't just someone's mother-in-law. I was a woman who had lived a full life. A woman who had loved deeply. A woman who still mattered, even if no one was calling. I wrote Daniel a letter. Not a long one. Not an angry one. Just a quiet letter. I told him I loved him. I told him I respected his choices. I told him I would always be here, without conditions. I did not ask for anything. I mailed it and let it go. Weeks later, I received a short message. Thanks for the letter, Mom. I hope you're doing okay. I stared at those words for a long time. They weren't everything. But they were something. And something was enough for now. I learned how to sit with my feelings instead of fighting them. When sadness came, I let it sit beside me. When loneliness knocked, I opened the door just enough to acknowledge it. I stopped blaming Emily. I realized she was protecting her own space, the way she knew how. I may not agree with how it was done, but understanding softened the edges of my pain. I also forgave Daniel. Not because he didn't hurt me. But because carrying that hurt was making my heart too heavy. Forgiveness did not bring things back to how they were. But it gave me peace. One day, months later, Daniel called. Mom, he said, Lily asked about you today. I held my breath. She found a photo of you and wanted to know who you were. I smiled through tears. What did you tell her? I asked. I told her you're her grandmother, he said. And that you love her very much. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time. Nothing was fixed. But something had shifted. I was no longer standing outside the door, waiting to be let in. I was standing in my own space. Whole. I don't know what the future will look like. I don't know if my son will call more often, or if my granddaughter will one day run into my arms the way he used to. I have learned not to demand answers from tomorrow. What I do know is this. Love does not disappear just because distance grows. It changes shape. It becomes quieter. It learns how to wait without hurting itself. There are still days when I pass by the park and imagine Lily there, laughing. There are still moments when I reach for my phone and stop myself. Those feelings haven't vanished. But they no longer control me. I have learned that being a mother does not end when your child grows up. It simply asks you to love in a new way. A harder way. A way that does not always get thanked. And being pushed away does not mean you were wrong for loving deeply. Sometimes, it only means the other person did not know how to hold that love yet. I still set an extra plate on holidays, just in case. I still keep the porch light on at night. Not because I expect anyone to come, but because hope deserves a place to rest. If there is one thing I want you to remember from my story, it is this. You can lose your place in someone else's life and still keep your dignity. You can be hurt and still remain kind. You can be alone without being empty. I am Margaret. I am a mother. I am still standing. And my heart, though quieter now, is still full of love.